So first thing I'm going to do is eliminate anything that isn't available as a full-time rental, which is typically considered 270 days or more. If somebody's just renting Airbnb part-time or only in peak season or only in off season because they live in it, that's not a realistic comp. I'm not able to realistically contend. I want to see what are other full-time rentals generating. So first thing I'm going to do is filter by, availability. Second is I need somebody who's been around for at least a year. So typically the kind of envelope math on that is 20 or more reviews, because if you're actively renting a short-term rental, and again, depending on your bedroom count and your number of turnovers, you might accumulate reviews quicker or slower, but you're realistically going to do at least 1.5 to 2 reviews a month. So if you've been a listing for a year, you're going to have at least 20 reviews, if not 30 or 40, depending on, again, number of turnovers. So that's the second thing I'm going to look for. Third thing is review gaps. So if there's a review in September, but there's nothing in August or July, that's a flag. Maybe they booked it out all summer for themselves. Maybe they put an owner's block. Because again, realistically, if I'm renting it full time, short of a close down for maintenance issue, which again is kind of, where it could break you a little bit, then that's where you need to understand is I need to filter that out. So if I make those basic filters right there, then I'm only working with data and comps that I feel confident are realistic. Mm-hmm. The next thing I need to do is start looking for clusters. So if I see a 4-bed that's over here doing 205, and then the next one's doing 165, that I'm not saying that data point's wrong. Maybe it's so different. It's the modern, it's the treehouse yurt, or it's just so different than everybody else. Sure. But if it looks very similar to a lot of the other 4-bedroom comps, I know that data point is probably flawed because, again, there is no exact science to this. So I need to look for clusters because, like I said, if everybody else is 160, 158, 155, 147, and I'm seeing this cluster in between 130 and 150, okay, that's more realistic. And there's just one guy doing 220 in revenue. That's an outlier. You never want to underwrite for outliers. You're going to get yourself in a lot of trouble. So you want to look for clusters. It's just more realistic to, kind of go up and benchmark against. So that's kind of how we're going to filter out all of those data points within any market. So that actually happens before we go into the market example I just told you. So first thing is we're going to clean and filter down, then take all those listings, put them on the map, look at the amenities, the data, the design, all of those things that we just talked about. But yeah, very first thing is we're going to trim that list. So we're going to download all the raw listings from any market and then start applying those filters: days available, reviews, review gaps, outliers, etc. And that's going to give me a really good, answer.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, no, it makes so much sense because you see those, especially in areas where it's very seasonal or it's close to, coastal market or next to, one of the big universities. There's so much skewed data there with all these properties that people just list for events, and then that drives up the average for the area. So how do you download that raw data? Are you using AirDNA or what's the process?
Yeah, I mean, we have a pretty cushy relationship with all of the largest data providers, them being one of them. Yeah. So yeah, our ability to download all of the raw data that they collect and scrape, and then we start doing our own filters. Granted, anybody can just create an account, go to Rabu or airdna.co, whatever, and start building your own comp sets. But you're kind of constrained to their UI, UX, and their tools. We have just learned over time, we operate at a completely different level. And so we want to be able to build our own filters, our own sorting, be able to dissect the data our own way. And so, yeah, we've just been, really pulling it into a Google Sheet or an Excel file and then building models and algorithms off of that. So we can start setting up filters, clusters, looking at different data points, tables, comp sets. But yeah, we've got a pretty cushy relationship with the data providers to pull all of that at a raw row level. So it's been very helpful to dissect that, and obviously gives us probably some of the best data access in the country.
Got it. Okay. And when I've looked at it, I've looked at it for my own properties, and I've seen the numbers be way off on what they say the revenue was, and I can see obviously I have the data because I've owned them for years. Do you find that that's the case? Because you can't see actual bookings, right? It's just like you can't dissect every booking like to see what the revenue was for the bookings. Like they're making projections, right? Or is that not the case?
So it depends on how they are scraping the data, because they all scrape it differently. So that's kind of the other thing, is you need to understand how they are getting to the numbers they're getting to, because they all arrive their different ways. So how it's collected, how it's scraped is all different. And that is also very important to understand, because how AirDNA versus Rabu versus anybody else is going to do it, they're all going to do it a little different. So you can't really take a one size fits all approach. You have to understand how do they do that? You have to read the fine print on how do they collect their data. And, those terms and conditions actually matter, because they tell you exactly what it's laid out for. I mean, I've heard all the stories like, hey, it's spot on, to, hey, it's $50,000 off. And everything in between. More often than not, I say it's directionally correct. I think anybody can cherry pick a one-off to work against them or for them. But more often than not, it's directionally correct. So I think, again, us being able to pull in data from the 3 largest data providers in the space mixed with the firsthand data. So the good news about doing 225 of these is we have arguably one of the best firsthand data sets across 12 different states in the country. So that just continues to improve your data confidence when looking at the raw data, is continuing to dump in all of our firsthand data from clients over the last 3.5 years. So you really get a good idea of how to know when something seems off, and when something is probably an accurate assessment. You can make an informed decision based off of it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Do you find that any of the big 3 is the most accurate to work with?
No, they're all going to be the same.
Okay.
Like I said, they all got pros and cons, and you just need to understand what you're working with. I think it's more the thing. People, might say, oh, AirDNA is great, or AirDNA is off, or Rabu's great, or Rabu's off. But like, if you don't know what you're working with, and that's where I kind of roll my eyes. I'm like, no, you're not using the data correctly. I call it user error, but that's, it's a little too hard to explain somebody that on social media. So you just let them think that they're the best data person in the world, despite, this is a weekend kick the tires event, not a full-time endeavor. So.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And then when it comes to market saturation, which is the next tenet on the website, this term has always felt very subjective to me. Like somebody says, "Oh, this one's saturated compared to this one." I'm like, "Well, is that just like a feeling? Like you see a lot of listings there, so it's saturated." Like, so I guess what's your definition of market saturation? How do you tell if a market is oversaturated or undersaturated?
I love the S word. Let me tell you right now, there is no such thing as any market being saturated. That to me tells you are a very retail or weak investor, because there is no such thing as a saturated market. There can be saturated bedroom counts, saturated styles of properties within certain markets, but there is no such thing as a saturated market. If you look at data, there is always a path to win. Now that path might be razor freaking thin depending on the market you go into, but every market, if you look at the data, has a path to win. And again, some markets are much harder. So let's unpack that, see what that looks like. So if I'm going to go to Broken Bow, Oklahoma, for example, now just based on data, this market had the most supply growth during COVID of any market in the United States. Now, not on total, but on a per basis. Okay. So the growth was the most. So somebody say, "Oh, Broken Bow is saturated." Well, if I go unpack the data, 1, 2, and 3 bedroom cabins make up 70% of the supply. Mm. Well, yeah, if you bought a 1, 2, or 3, I mean, I wish you the best of freaking luck. 70% of everything on Airbnb in Broken Bow, Oklahoma is a 1, 2, or 3 bedroom cabin. So the data tells you there's a shortage of the big boys to go appeal to the groups and families. So I see 5, 6, 7, 8 bedroom cabins absolutely dominating in the data in Broken Bow, Oklahoma. But you buy a 1, 2, or 3, you might say, "Oh, not getting any bookings. You're complaining in the Facebook group. Broken Bow saturated." Nah, it just tells me you bought the wrong product. You know what you're doing for it. Go to a place like Blue Ridge, Georgia. There's a shortage of 1 bedroom cabins for couples getaways. The Hampton Inn, the freaking Hampton Inn, not the Ritz-Carlton, not the Four Seasons, the Hampton Inn in downtown is getting $180 a night on a Tuesday during summer. If you just have a nice cabin in the woods with a hot tub and a fire pit, you're going to go get $200-300 a night with your eyes closed. If you have a 1-bed couples getaway, because people leaving Atlanta an hour and a half away, or us Floridians who get in their car and drive north, the very first mountain range you hit is Blue Ridge. Well, there's a shortage for couples getaway cabins. So you buy a 2, 3, or 4 bedroom, which also makes up 75% of the supply in Blue Ridge, Georgia. Yeah, it's going to be hard to stand out. You got to go really big to a 5 or go to the other in a 1. Now you're probably like, man, there's no 1-bedroom cabins for sale. Yeah, most of those are built. And that's kind of the problem is nobody really builds a, 600-700 square foot. And nobody ever sells them. If they build them, it's build to keep. So I think you need to understand the market. I mean, even arguably the most cutthroat competitive market, Disney, Davenport, Kissimmee, there's still a path to win. Granted, it is probably one of the most razor thin paths, but you got to be 10 bedrooms or more to have a shot. Now, again, that's very wild to say out loud, but like, yeah, you go get a 10, 11, 12, or 14 bedroom and you get it in the right community with the right amenities and the right design, you can have a chance to profitability. I think there's worse ways you can invest capital. If you really like banging your head against the wall, then like go for it. I'm not going to stop you, but every market has a path to profitability. So when somebody tells me the S word, it just tells me you're just a retail investor, man. Like every market is investable. You just need to understand what you need to buy, what works. I mean, I always love this, like the Ozarks, Branson, Missouri. Everybody loves that. Like 2-bedroom condos. I don't know why there's a glut of 2 bedrooms. That makes up 42% of the supply. You couldn't give me a 2-bedroom condo for free. I wouldn't even take it. It's not even worth it. I'm going to knife fight everybody on a race to the bottom on price. And we're all fighting over $49 a night bookings. And I've got a lakefront, beautiful cabin, like condo. I mean, it's so terrible. And that's the thing is you need to understand what works for this market, what amenities can differentiate, what bedroom counts. But there is no such thing as a saturated market. So I always love rolling my eyes at that one.
Yeah, that's super interesting because I've felt the same thing, and also there's different obviously quality levels within markets too. So like you're kind of saying, well, everyone's going to be treated equally, and obviously somebody's going to win in all those. It's going to be a lot harder in Branson, Missouri, if you have the 2-bedroom condo, but the person who's winning, is the best. Has the best property probably is still doing much better than the worst. But I kind of learn this. I'm nowhere near as detail oriented in the data analytics space as you are, but with we built a couple properties in Southwest Florida, and as we're doing it, there's a lot of competition there. But I have a friend who's a builder, and I was like, I see a lot of single family homes, but our model is multi-unit together, and then we can have the super listing where we book them out both together. And so we built side by side that sleep 8 on each side. The super listing sleeps 18 with the shared pool in the back. So we have some diversity that we can book them out individually, but that super listing has just killed it. I mean, it stays booked constantly. It's our highest occupancy because there's not that many affordable properties that sleep 16 people in Southwest, in Port Charlotte is where we're at. Even though there's a lot of properties, available in that market, but it's also a popular destination market too. So yeah, I think it's just because it's a little bit different, and it, has the competitive advantage. So I think you got to figure out your competitive advantage. So
yeah, I mean, if you want to really go into the moats, like based on how Airbnb's set up today, if you are buying a bigger 4, 5, 6, I can't emphasize enough how important it is, assuming your local municipality doesn't have occupancy restrictions, because that would be a caveat to this. Getting to that 16 plus mark is huge, because if you have 16 guests that you sleep, even on the minimum side, you're going to show up with the properties that sleep 18, 20, 24. Because remember, Airbnb, how it's set today is it just shows a 16 plus. So you get free advertising, you get to punch above your weight. And so I can't emphasize when people are setting up the beds that like maybe you should drop bunk beds in or take out that king and drop in 2 fulls or 2 queens, because getting to 16 plus carries so much more revenue power than a 5-bed that sleeps 14. And you just look at the data, you want to check that box. And then I have also seen if you can get north of 20 and then you advertise that in your title, sleeps 22, sleeps 24. There's just so few in any market across the US. Again, Disney probably being the biggest supply of them. But in most normal air quotes markets, if you can have that, you're just going to win based on limited availability. You could still have ugly carpet. You could have designed it yourself, didn't even hire a designer. You took out your listing photos with your iPhone. You're still going to get bookings just based on there's no one else who can even accommodate those groups. So I like going in when that guy is the top performer and saying, oh, well, I'm going to actually hire a designer, actually put in amenities, get a professional photographer, and I'll go wipe that guy's bookings out because there's only a couple of us that sleep 22 guests. So like that's another little niche hack is if you're going to play in the big boy space, the 5, 6s, 7s, 8s, etc. At minimum, aim for 16 plus. Don't put a king bed in every room and you're like, cool, I'm a 5 bed, sleeps 10. You're just setting yourself up for failure. In 90% of markets, there's a couple carve out markets, of course, where it's heads and beds isn't your strategy, but that's more of the envelope math for, most normal markets in the United States.
Such a great point. Yeah. Yeah. And the competition at that level too is super expensive in a lot of cases. So if you can be a little bit more affordable option, I think a lot of people are you're going to capture that side of the market. So that makes sense. And then when it comes to accurately projecting revenue, the big pushback I get, or the big, intrepidation that a lot of people have who are just getting started with this is, yeah, okay, so I can see the previous data and I can see what it's done in the past, but I can't predict future bookings, so how do I know what I can expect and if the market's going to change next year? So what's your thought on that? How do you accurately project revenue?
Yeah, I mean, what you're realistically looking at is T12, so trailing 12-month revenues, which is going to be your best bet. In platforms like Airbnb and others, you can forward look 180 days, of bookings. You can also watch the demand curve of any market and see is demand trending up or is it trending down? So are more and more people traveling to this market quarter over quarter? Yes or no? To predict where it's going to be 2 or 3 years from now, I think it's pretty impossible. So, if that's what you're holding out for, you'll never buy a short-term rental ever in your life because you're never going to get that answer. What you can just do is make the best available decision based on the data you have today. That's really all you can do. I'll even tie in a personal story here. A couple years ago, me and my wife, we sold our house, one of those crazy people that had a 3.5% interest rate. And I traded for a 6 flat. And, a lot of people in my circle, like, you're an idiot. That was so dumb. I can't believe you did. Again, it's a primary residence investment. Like, could I afford the monthly payment? Yes. Is it a location, a house me and the wife and the fam wanted to go to? Yes. So we made the decision. It's not an investment.
So wait, I'm sorry. So it was a 6 unit?
No, 3.5% interest rate for a 6.0% interest rate.
Oh, 6. I thought you meant like a 6 flat, like a 6 unit.
Yeah, no. 6. Yeah, okay. 6 flat, 6.0.
Got it.
And, again, a lot of people are like, man, like that's crazy. Never did.
Yeah.
And that was little over 2 years ago now. Interest rates when I bought kept going up and they've never come back down. The closest they got was 6.2. And that was when they were on that downward trend. I called my lender and said, hey man, get the refinance paperwork ready, sharpen your pencils. Cause once we get down to like 5.75, man, I'm refinancing. We value added a bedroom, put a pool in, I'm here in Florida. And I was like, man, I'm going to pull out some equity. And it got right down to 6.2 and then it went right back up again. And it has never come since. So now I look like a genius locking in 6.0 interest rate 2 years ago because it hasn't gotten there since. But to say, oh, well, you can predict the market, it's delusional. So anybody who says you're overpaying based on what? Compared to what? How could you know? If we look back, you might not have any idea. I think they say that the best time to buy real estate was 5 years ago. The next best time is today because you just never know.